Well, Renee, don't know if you want to go ahead and make the introductions or if I should just go ahead and dive in.
I will introduce you.
Terrific.
Welcome, everyone, to the Project Virtual Conference. It's all about the baselines. I'd like to introduce to you your speaker for this conference is Julie Sheets. Julie is a project MVP and independent consultant instructor with more than 20 years' experience. She lives in Maine and travels throughout the United States, assisting companies with the practice of project management and using Microsoft Project. So, without further ado, let's get this party started. Take it away, Julie.
Thanks so much. I apologize for any of you who were expecting that you might see Megan Trainor. Um, she wasn't available, so I'm filling in for her. But thanks very much for taking time out of what I'm sure is a really busy day for you. I hope you've been enjoying the Project Virtual Conference. It's exciting for those of you who are working with the session as well. So as introduced, my name is Julie Sheets, and I'm here to do about an hour-long session or so, kind of looking at using Microsoft Project to go from just the planning, from creating that brilliant Gantt chart and resource plan that you may have, and actually using it to not only tell us what we had planned, but also what is actually going on. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is share my screen with you, and we'll see if we can get this party started. So again, thanks very much for joining us. I will probably be reserving some time at the end for any questions that come up, but you can feel free to go ahead and drop them into the chat. And if there's anything really exciting, we'll make sure we get to it. So as I said, this is our 1-hour session entitled It's All About the Baselines. And thanks so much for joining us. And speaking of thanks very much to our sponsors. We literally could not be doing this without them. So I hope all of you who are attending these sessions are taking advantage and going into the sponsors lobby to find out a little bit about each one of our sponsors who are working. So during our hour-long session today, what we'll be doing is covering a kind of some different topics about moving that project plan from the planning stages, baselining it, and then moving it into execution. So in broad terms, what we'll be taking a look at is really kind of the how and why of baselines. What are baselines? Why should you care? And when should you be baselining, and can you be baselining? We'll also take a look at a couple of different methods of tracking. Now, in all of the circumstances that we're working together today, the assumption is that we're working without project server. So as project managers or project leaders or people who are doing the schedules, we're going to be responsible for updating the information in our schedule with our tracking data. We'll also take a look at a couple of those special cases in tracking. What happens if you had originally planned someone to do the series of tasks in a specific order, and they go out and they do it in another order? What happens if someone ends up doing more work, but in the same amount of time that we had originally discussed? Or what if someone is doing the same amount of work, but in less time than we had planned? And we'll sort of wrap up our session today taking a look at some different ways of looking at progress and also reporting back variance. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into our agenda. So our first idea here is talking about, well, why do we save a baseline? And the answer is really quite simple. We save baselines in Microsoft Project once we've finished our planning stage and before we start executing it. Now, you don't necessarily have to baseline an entire project. If you're working more on a rolling wave, I mean, kind of the classic as we think of as software development, well, until we do the requirements, we really don't know what it's going to take to construct it and test it and deploy it. So when should you save a baseline? Well, really before you start tracking. The idea of the baseline is that it just serves as the marker saying this is how we hope things come out. So what I'm going to do is actually switch over to Microsoft Project here for just a moment. And I will just let you know that all of the project files that you are seeing today are completely fictitious. So they are completely made up out of my own sad little mind. I did use one of the templates that is available, mostly just to save me a lot of typing, but the names have been changed to protect the entirely innocent. So this is a fairly straightforward project plan. I do have it set up with several summary tasks. So I have scope, I have analysis, I have design, and so forth. The project plan is resource loaded. So I do have resources assigned. The fact that you're not seeing any numbers, as many of you may know, the fact that you're not seeing any numbers to the right of the resource assignments is not necessarily indicative of how those resources are actually assigned. But let's go ahead and dive into baselining. So if I want to baseline my entire project, I have a really good feeling about how everything's going to come out. Maybe we've performed this type of project several times, and we sort of have a good understanding of the plan.
Hi, Julie.
Yes, ma'am.
We are not seeing your screen. All we're seeing is that infinity screen.
The infinity screen?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right.
No, I don't know if the chat is on or something.
Oh, that is really quite cool. So let me do this. I'm going to stop the screen share here for a second. So you should be back, I'm hoping, to just seeing me.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you're back to just seeing me. So let me go ahead and try, let me go back to my Excel, or back to my PowerPoint screen here, or sorry, project screen. And let me just try sharing just that app. And maybe that's what my strange and interesting issue is. So let me try just that. How's that?
That looks great.
Terrific. Okay, great. Thanks very much. Thanks for that heads up, because the infinity screen, I'm sure, was a little spooky. So we'll go ahead and go back to my project file and start baselining. So to save a baseline for the entire project, simply go into Project. On the project ribbon, you have a choice that says Save Baseline. And of course, they want to make sure you really want to save the baseline. So I'll choose Set Baseline. And when we save a baseline, we actually have a couple of different options going on. We can save a baseline, we can save a baseline for the entire project, or as I'll show you in just a moment, if we come into this dialog box with tasks selected, we can go ahead and actually baseline just tasks that we select. But first, let's go ahead and choose Save Baseline. Now, the exciting thing is, because of the way I have this particular Gantt chart selected, is the baseline bars show up for me automatically. How did I do that? Well, a couple of different choices. Probably the easiest way is to go ahead, just right-click anywhere in the background of the Gantt chart, and from that background choice, you can choose ShowHide Bar Styles, and then baseline it. So you can show any baselines that you've saved. So of course, when I look at the bars line up perfectly, exactly as I would expect, because I just saved a baseline. Now, if I saved a baseline for the entire project, or maybe I decide that I should only be baselining maybe just the scope and the analysis phase. Although I have built out some of the later phases like design and development, I know I may still be sort of tweaking those a little bit as we go along. So I'm going to clear the baseline for the project, and I clear the baseline exactly in the same place I just set the baseline. So back on my project ribbon, I choose Set Baseline, and the second choice in that menu is Clear. And I can clear any baseline plan that I've saved. Right now, the only baseline I have is the one I just saved a moment ago. So I'll go ahead and clear that baseline. And now I'll go ahead and I'm just going to select my tasks down through and grab the scope phase and the analysis software requirement phase, because I know as I'm going through my analysis that I'm probably still going to be making some additional adjustments on the phases later in the project. So I'll choose set baseline again, and this time I'll choose the option to baseline only the selected tasks. Now I can also roll up that baseline from my selected tasks into all summary tasks, or from my subtasks into just the selected summaries. So I'll choose from subtasks into selected summaries, choose OK. So now if I scroll on down a little bit, you'll see once I get down to task or down to my design phase that I'm not seeing the baseline data appear any longer. So why might you rebaseline? This project right now, if I go take a peek up here at the top, is not scheduled to start for a couple of weeks. And it's never been known to happen that sometimes the start times of projects are either started early or they're started late. And obviously, if the project start date is shifted before I start working on tracking it, then I probably don't want to be held to an original baseline. So I'm going to go ahead, obviously, and move my, because all of the tasks in my project are auto-scheduled and I don't have any constraints in it, and I haven't started tracking it, then I can go ahead and actually move the start date of my project by simply going back in to project information. So I'll select my project information dialog box, and I'm going to simply move the start date of my project from the 16th of November, and I'll just move it on to the 2nd of November. When I click, of course, all of my current dates have been moved. And once my current dates have been moved, my baseline, the gray bars back here, aren't lining up anymore. So the great news would be, of course, that I have a little bit of wiggle room because my baselines are now behind my actual starts. So I will go ahead and rebaseline those particular phases again. So I'll just go ahead and reselect. Now, one of the nice things that you can do in Project is you can actually save multiple baselines. So let's say perhaps, I beg your pardon, let's say perhaps that I work for an organization that's not really far along kind of the maturity level. So they have some issues behind control, have some issues about making sure the priorities are clearly associated. So what I'd like to do is, instead of destroying my original baseline, I'm going to take that baseline for my task that I just saved a minute ago, and I'll go ahead and copy that baseline into a spare baseline, and then go ahead and be able to overwrite the original baseline. So why don't I just save a new baseline? Well, as you folks may be aware of, when we save baselines in Project, Microsoft Project calculates variance, so the difference between what you said and what's really going on, for you. Now, you can certainly shift the baseline that's used, but by default, it'll always calculate against the field called baseline. So I'm going to first take the baseline data that I have and copy it into a new baseline. So I simply go back to the same place I was several times so far, back to my project ribbon. I choose the choice set baseline. And what I'm first going to do is take the baseline that I have right now, and I'm going to copy it into one of the other baselines. And that is through this set interim plan idea. So I'll choose Set Interim Plan. I'm going to copy baseline into baseline 1. And I'll just grab the selected tasks because I've reselected them again. I'll choose OK. And nothing really interesting happens right now other than behind the scenes, what has happened is those baseline 1 fields have been populated. So I now have both a baseline start and baseline finish, baseline work, baseline cost, baseline duration for. I also have baseline 1 start, baseline 1 finish, and so forth. And right now, those values match. So now that I've captured or copied my original baseline data into baseline 1, I'm going to go back and rebaseline. So I'll go back to set baseline again. Now, the nice thing is it always tells me the date that I saved a baseline. So I know that I have my 2 baselines saved. So I have my first original baseline that's now been copied into baseline 1. I'm going to go back and write over the true baseline value. So I'll leave that selected. I'll just say, OK. And I get a warning. Baseline, are you sure you want to use it? I'm going to say, yep, we're good to go. And now again, of course, my bars all line up. So everything is back lined up against each other. Now, baseline data shows up in the Gantt chart. Baseline data, of course, also shows up in different tables. There actually is a table called baseline that I can pick up. And here's my baseline data, my duration, start, work, and cost, and so forth. So this project now has a baseline for the first phase or 2 that we're working with. So I'm going to cross my fingers here again, and I'm going to see if I can go back and act for just a second. So you'll get a chance, sadly, probably to see me again. And I'm going to go back and try a screen share again. And I'll just pop back into my PowerPoint presentation for just a moment. And so we talked a little bit about the hows and the whys of the baseline. Next topic that we'll tackle is some different ways that we track, different ways that we can actually update the project with the actual data. So we'll take a look at a couple of different methods of tracking, and both the update project command, which is always the one that just makes me laugh, by the way, because I always find it funny that anybody would use. Actually probably does work pretty well. So we'll take a look at a couple of methods. The update project command, which I happily refer to as everything is fine, thanks very much for asking. We'll take a look at tracking at a more detailed level using specifically the tracking table. And then we'll also take a look at tracking timescale data. Now, timescale data, of course, is going to be either updating actual work on a weekly or a daily or whatever basis works the best for you. So I'm going to stop the share again, and I am going to go back, and I'll try a screen share again, and I'll share project with you. So we're actually looking at a slightly different project. Actually, it's the same project. This one has still been moved forward into November. And as you can see, I actually have a fair amount of baseline data in here. So I'm going to go zoom the entire project out. And I've just lived dangerously. I've decided to go ahead and baseline my entire project. I'll go back and zoom back in today's for just a moment, just to sort of describe to you a little bit about what it is that we're seeing when we start looking at this information. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll to the task. And I've got my Gantt bar showing my baselines. The red bar that you see over here coming down on after November 13th is the status bar. So this is the status date. One of the nice things is in project that, let's say you've been asked to create a project plan for a project that's already midstream. I wouldn't worry a lot about being terribly accurate with gathering the data, because what you can do is just put your data in as you think it came out, and then quickly update a bunch of tasks using the update project command. So I have my status set, and I set, of course, my status either on the project ribbon where it says status date, or you can go to project information and your status date can be set there. And what I'm going to do is, on my project ribbon, right underneath my choice that says status date, I'll go ahead and update the project. So you'll see it says update work is complete through, and it's picking that status date. I'll leave the choice 0 through 100% complete. There are some organizations that only update projects or update tasks if they are 100% complete. For me, that can be too late to get into some serious difficulties. So I will leave set 0 through 100. I'll choose OK. And as expected, what I'm seeing is my task determine scope requirement, task number 3, and task number 4 are all now 100% complete. So the update project command works on a couple of pieces of assumptions. First off, and it could be 100% accurate, it works on the assumption that you are the world's most perfect project manager, which you may very well be. Or it also works to do a real quick update with information. Now, when I'm updating information and I'm using the update project command, I'm setting solely percent complete. Now, obviously, if I'm setting percent complete and there's work on the task because I have resources assigned, percent complete, which is a duration measurement, and percent work complete are very closely tied together. For some of us, that's the best we can do, which is just go ahead and update percent completes. But with a couple of pretty minor changes, and I'm just going to close this project file, and I'm going to close this project file, and I'm going to go open up another project file that, again, just has some other information going on in it. And same idea, status date, showing down here the bar on the right, same tasks, same resources. And what we're going to do is switch over to tracking using the task table. So I'm still in my Gantt chart view, and I'm going to switch tables. So I simply go right up on my table selector, that is right up above all of my task ID numbers. Simple right click, and I switch to the tracking table. And I'm just going to grab this Gantt chart here for a second, drag it a little bit out of the way. And what I see when I'm looking at the tracking table is a bunch of actual data. So I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong project file. That's all right, I can still use this one. Oh, sorry, let me try this one more time. There we go. Sorry. So switch over to my tracking table, and what I have is columns for actual start, actual finish, percent complete. Now, I don't personally use the physical percent complete. You may know that you can use physical percent complete as an alternate method of tracking for earned value data. I'm going to just remove that column because I really don't need it. So I'll just click on the column heading, tap delete to get rid of that. I have my field for actual duration, remaining duration, and the actual cost is calculated by project. So I think I'll get rid of that too. I have actual work, and I think I'm also going to add remaining work. So I'll just click in that last add column to the right. I'll grab my remaining work column here. So when I start tracking at this level, what I'm looking at is tracking at a task level. So as you can see, I have a task of determine project scope. And if I look over here to the Gantt chart, I actually have a number of different people in this particular task. So the thing we've got to remember is that this 32 hours worth of work that I'm seeing over here is 32 hours spread out over a number of people. But if I start to fill in my actual and my remaining duration, project will fill in for me an actual start. If I fill in an actual duration which is greater than or equal to the original plan, it'll assume I'm done, and it'll fill in an actual finish, and it will update my percent complete. So task number 3, I can see right now, had a planned duration of 3 days. So I'll fill in an actual duration of 2 days, and when I enter that data, it automatically fills in a bunch of information. Number 1, it assumed I started the task when I was supposed to start. So it filled in an actual start date. It didn't fill in an actual finish because I still have 1 day in remaining duration. Updated the actual work and updated the remaining work. So it says I'm 67% complete based upon completing 2 out of a total of 3 days. Well, what happens if I've worked on it for 2 days and we still got another 2 days left? The great news is I can update this remaining duration. And when I update that remaining duration, I want you to notice what's happened on my Gantt chart. By updating the remaining duration, whether it be a good news or a bad news piece, what I get to see is the automatic projection of the new dates. So project has dropped my percent complete to 50% because now I'm only 2 days out of a total of 4 days versus 2 days out of a total of 3. And very importantly, it's projected the new finish date for this task because I'm projecting I'm going to finish this task 1 day later, and this task was a predecessor to others. Then with that one simple change, my tasks have been updated. Now, a lot of people say, but I don't want my dates to change. Well, if you're projecting that it's going to take you longer to do something, wouldn't you want to know about that ahead of schedule versus finding out when you get 2 weeks before the end date that you're not going to make it? I'm hoping the answer is yes. So this allows me, and again, it works in a couple of set of assumptions. It assumes when I started filling in an actual duration that I started the task when I was scheduled to. Let's say I didn't. It's even worse news. We didn't start it on the 2nd. We didn't get around to starting it until the 3rd. Now again, I haven't changed the actual and remaining durations. It's still 2 days in, 2 days to go, 50% complete. But because I started the task late, it's again reprojecting a new finish date based upon an actual start of November 3rd and an actual duration of 2 days. Let's say the good news is, even though they started it a day late, they actually overestimated when they reprojected how long it was going to take. So now we've worked on it for 3 days, and you'll notice project updates the percent complete. It hasn't re-updated the new end date, but the great news is, because they felt so bad about starting it a day late, that they've actually doubled down, got the work done in 3 days. Now, what I don't want to do is update this percent complete to 100%, because then project will assume I took the whole 4 days. If I complete a task and I don't need the remaining duration, I can simply go to the remaining duration field and zero it out. I get my actual finish date. I'm still a day behind schedule, but I get my actual finish date. I get my percent complete. Now, if a task is done, then you certainly can go in, fill in an actual start date, fill in an actual finish date, and you don't have to worry about the whole percent complete or anything else. It will assume, because you filled in a start date and a finish date, that you're done. So I have a 1-day duration task, and because I'd saved a baseline before, I can now begin to look at the difference between what I had planned and what's really going on. So tracking in the tracking table gives you better control about what's going on, and it's much more accurate. And again, some of this is just, working through it and working kind of through the process with your people. If they've always been able to get away with saying, oh yeah, I'm 95% done, then this is a little bit of a culture shift. But the idea is that the more accurate that we can be when we start tracking, the better we can do our projections. So I can see here in this project that even though I started task 2 late and I started task 3 late, that because I actually finished task 3 before I was scheduled to, that the schedule of these future tasks have actually moved forward. So at this moment, it's good news, which of course means it won't stay that way for much longer. So I'm going to go ahead, close this project file, and we'll look kind of at our last scenario on a way of tracking, kind of basic tracking. And that is tracking using what's called time-scaled information. Now, this may be it's not that it's hard to do. This really becomes an issue of what kind of data can you get from your people. So I'm going to go ahead and just switch quickly back here into my entry table. Excuse me, this is a very similar project. It's the exact same project as we were just working on. And because I have multiple resources assigned to each one of these tasks, and they're all working different amounts of work, then if I can get data from them about how much work they did on this particular task during the week or during the day, then I can really be extremely accurate with my tracking. As I was mentioning, the trouble is, of course, making sure that we have this data available to us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over and jump over into the task usage view. So of course, the Gantt chart view that I'm looking at right now is a task view. But when I switch to the task usage view, so I go over here where it says Gantt chart, I simply right click and I pick the task usage view. This is a detailed view that shows me for every task, every assignment. So I can see that on my first task here that I actually have, and they're all doing different amounts of work. So I'm going to simply scroll the right-hand side of my screen into view, because for some reason I can't describe to you, I suddenly seem to be looking at June. So I'll go ahead and scroll the section into view. What I'm seeing now, because I happen to be looking at a daily basis, and by the way, you don't have to do this daily. I just want you to see closely what happens when you start playing around with actual work. So I can start tracking actual work, what I'm going to do is turn on the actual work on the right-hand side of my screen. So I'll right-click anywhere on the right-hand side, and underneath in my shortcut menu, I'll just choose actual work. So I'm going to say on this Monday, which is when the task was supposed to start, I can see that Patricia was scheduled to do a little bit more than an hour and a half. if I enter in more work than she was scheduled to do, so I just entered in 2 hours worth of work in her, project is still assuming that my original 5 hours worth of work estimate was spot on. So, because she worked more hours than she was scheduled to work on one day, project just dropped the amount of work on the last day of the task for her. Peter, on the other hand, was scheduled to work 8 hours in that first Monday, and stuff happens. He only he was scheduled to do. Again, project is assuming that the original 24 hours worth of work that I had scheduled for him was 100% accurate. So it's just taken the 2 hours worth of work that he didn't do on Monday and just moved it into Thursday. And as you can imagine, if I just moved work, I also just shifted an end date. So I'm going to just quickly jump back into my Gantt chart for just 1 second here. And with that little tiny change, that extra 2 hours worth of work is beginning to affect the schedule of that particular task. So let me just pop back in my task usage view here again. And Paula was only supposed to do a total of 1 hour worth of work. Well, she did it all. So she did all of her work on Monday. Now, she's just one assignment. Even though she's done with her work, there is still work remaining for other people. For both Penelope and Stephen, I had only anticipated 1 hour worth of work. They both did 2 hours on that very first day. So as I enter in more work on every assignment, so the assignment for Stephen to the task, the assignment for Penelope to the task, as I'm entering in more work, project is assuming they're done. So on the second day, Priscilla didn't do anything. So I'm just going to go to her, Patricia. I'm just going to go to her actual work. I'm going to zero it out. And again, project is still assuming she has another 3 hours worth of work to do. So it did not move all 3 hours for her into Wednesday. It moved some of the work in, and her remaining work is still on Thursday. Well, on Wednesday, she did 2 hours, and on Tuesday, Peter did nothing. So, yep, the end date of that just got moved again. But on Wednesday, Peter did 10 hours worth of work. And the good news is the task is done. So this additional 1 hour remaining work from the original 5, and this additional 8 hours of remaining work from the original 24, we don't need. So I'll just go delete that out. And of course, when I deleted it out, I changed the finish date of the task. And because the finish date of that task changed, its successor also moved forward. So even though I can't see my Gantt chart normally from this view, I am going to go ahead and just turn it on for a second. I'm just going to put my Gantt chart here in the bottom of my screen. Now remember, nobody did any work on that task on Tuesday. So the task is complete here on Tuesday. And even though they didn't do quite the original amount of work, we were able to get the task begun and end as it was originally scheduled. Now, bear in mind, I'm looking at this on a daily basis. For most of us, far too detailed, but you certainly can scroll your view out, and in the time scale, I'll choose weeks. And now I'm looking, if I scroll down a little bit here, I'm looking that we had scheduled 9 hours worth of work in total on the task on the week of November 1st, and 12 hours worth of work in total. And again, on an assignment basis, line by line by line, I can start logging that work in. So I'm going to say Patricia did 5 hours worth of work that week. And again, you'll see the remaining work is dropping. 5 hours worth of work, 2 hours, 2 hours. And sadly, the next week, it took another 5 hours and another 5 hours and another 2 hours and another 2 hours. So even though my other people weren't scheduled to work on that task, I can still go ahead and add actual work after the information is entered. So these different methods of tracking, again, a lot of it really just is, how are you getting data? If you're just getting, I'm 50% complete, I'm 60% complete, then can you get more detailed? Don't jump to here. Don't jump to tracking on a week by week basis. But can you move into asking them, when did you start? When did you finish? If you're not finished, what's your projection for how much more time duration is it going to take you? So let's take a situation where everything looked pretty good for a while. So I'm going to, again, just open up another project file so you don't have to watch me step through these. So I've updated a couple of tasks in my project now. And as you can see, it's actually good news. I've got work planned ahead of my baseline. And of course, it's always when we think everything is good to go that it's not. So we end up in trouble. So you happily went home from work Friday night thinking everything was actually ahead of schedule. You can see my current plan here is one plan. The white is, of course, my baseline. So right now, this is all good news. You come back to work Monday morning and someone says, oh, you know that project you're working on? Well, we need to stop it for a couple of weeks because there's another high priority project or a crisis that came up, or fill in the blank. It could be almost anything. So what I need to do right now is take every one of these tasks, lop them off, and move them out by 2 weeks. So I'm going to play around with my step. Seeing is my status date. I'm going to move it out to this Friday following, so it's the 27th. So we're going to pick up everything and restart it the week of the 29th. So before I make any moves, I'm just going to change my status date to the 29th. And I know you're saying, yeah, but the 29th is a Sunday. It's because status updates are usually as of 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So by setting it to the Sunday before, everything will be rescheduled for 8 o'clock first thing Monday morning. So I've moved my status date. You saw me use the update project command earlier. What we're going to do is use this bottom part of the update project command. So I'll just choose reschedule uncompleted work to start after. And with one click, I move everything. Now, this could be a moment where you're renegotiating, rebaselining the tasks that you moved and the rest of the tasks in your project. It really is sort of up to you and your sponsor to talk about how you may go ahead and do that. So that was a little bit about tracking. Let me go ahead and jump back in and see if I can just share my PowerPoint presentation here for just a second. We took a look at tracking. So let's jump forward to some of those special cases. What happens if we are tracking and the resources that we have on our tasks are doing work out of sequence? What happens if our resources did more work than we had planned on them doing, but they still got it accomplished within the original duration or within the original schedule? And of course, we'll take a look at the other side, which is they did the same amount of work, but they did it in less time. So let me go back and try this again. I apologize. Whoops, sorry. I think I just did a little funny thing to you with the multiple repeating pieces again. Sorry about that. So let me stop this share. Sorry, you have to keep seeing my face all the time. And let me go back and share my PowerPoint. Sorry, my project file, which is what I'm more interested in. So I'm going to go ahead, switch to a very simple project just because I really want you to sort of see what is happening when I do this. So I'm going to go ahead and open a very small project. And this one is kind of one of the classic conundrums that we find ourselves in when we start scheduling. So maybe I have a project file that I have a couple of tasks in any schedule. There's really no relationship between the tasks. The problem is that, of course, if I have the same resources assigned to them, that of course I'm going to have over-allocated resources. So what I'm going to do is make one mistake that's going to come back and haunt us in a sec, and then I'm going to fix the other mistake in actually a better way. So tasks A and B, resource one is assigned to both of them, and they occur at the same time. So of course, one way of solving that is to simply link them. Now, when I link, what I'm telling project is I have to do, because I've done a finish to start link, I have to do task A before I can do task B. Knows that, and project will pay attention to that. Task C and task D, I also have a resource who's overallocated, but in this circumstance, I'm going to solve that problem by just simply leveling resource 2. In this case, you'll see it's actually kicked task C out before, or excuse me, out after task D. I'm just going to pop back into my tracking table here. And again, very simple ways of working. I'm going to go ahead and say on task A, I've worked an actual duration of 1 day out of a total of 3. So project updates my percent complete to 33%, sets a start date of the day the task was scheduled to start. Now, I'm going to say, well, I actually started task B on the 27th. And you'll notice what happened when I do that is project still says, no, 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 you can't do that. So it set an actual start date of the task, but it split the task. So if I put in that I had worked on it for 1 day, it puts the work actually in the future. So it's keeping the work that I've allegedly performed in the original relationship with the task. So how can I do this? Well, there's a couple of different ways. One is if you can get into your task usage view and turn on actual work, you'll see what project has done. So this is task B, and instead of putting the work here on Tuesday, it's kept it on Thursday. I can always go in and put 8 hours of actual work in on Tuesday. Now, of course, I didn't do any actual work 2 days in the future, so I'm going to just go ahead and delete out this actual work that I have. And you'll see when I do that, if I pop back into my Gantt chart, that project has gone ahead and agreed to have the actual work occur on Tuesday. The remaining amount of work is still scheduled to finish after the finish date of task A. Now, for task C and task D, I didn't link them. I just leveled them. So because there is no link relationship, I can go ahead and say, nope, the resource did task C starting on the 26th. They did 2 days worth of work, they're done. Now, of course, the resource 2 is back to being over allocated. But remember, you can level a project anytime you need to. And oh, by the way, resource 1 is also over allocated because they're still scheduled to be working on task A. So now, instead of relinking, I can just level resource 1 and fix that problem as well. So what project has done is it has split up the tasks. So if you have no true relationship between the tasks, don't link them. Go ahead and use resource leveling to spread the tasks out, but there is no real reason to link them. Another scenario is, what if I have a resource who does more work than they were scheduled to do, but they did it in the same amount of time? So let me just open this project. So I have task number 2 is supposed to be 3 days in duration and 28 hours worth of work. I have my task form visible at the bottom, and I'm just going to switch that over to the work format. There's my 24 hours worth of baseline work. So I'll fill in and say of actual work. And project says, well, no, wait a minute. If he did 30 hours worth of actual work, it must have taken him longer than 3 days. If I go back and say, no, 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 he actually finished it on the 28th, I start getting into kind of this circular relationship and discussion with project where it says, no, if he finished it on the 28th, then it must be 24 hours. So if you know, I just reset my actual work to 0, by the way. If you know that your resources have performed more work, but in the same time, then before you track it, simply switch the task to a task type of fixed duration. Now I can put in my 30 hours worth of work. Oh, sorry, I just put that into remaining, beg your pardon. My 30 hours of actual work. Project says, oh, so we just did 30 hours worth of work, did it in 2 days. And yes, in case you're wondering about this, Peter worked more than 8 hours a day. But the thing to remember is that you can always over-allocate a resource. You can schedule them for more hours in actuals and be able to go ahead and work through that. So we'll stay in this same file. For task number 3, Patricia is only doing 7.5 hours worth of work, but it's spread out across 5 days in duration. So as you can assume, she is not assigned to that task at 100%. 7.5 hours worth of work. So I'll go, and by the way, you can put the actual work down here or up here. It works the same place. And when I finish it, it says, nope, she finished it on November 4th. Now, the same problem is going to occur if I say, no, 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 she finished it on November 2nd. It says, well, then in that particular circumstance, the task had to be fixed work, which is what the task is right now, to be able to get the same amount of work done as she was originally scheduled in less time. I'm going to skip going back to my slide deck, and I'll just kind of talk my way through this last slide and talk about reporting. One of the things that was really widely improved, honestly, in this release of project, and this is the 2013 release, is some of the reports. So I'm just going to switch over to my reports. As you can see, I have a project that is pretty well tracked. So I actually have progress down here through about task number 19. Now, obviously, I can see visual information. I can look at the comparison of my Gantt chart against my baseline bars. I can certainly go look at something like the variance table, because that shows me scheduled start, scheduled finish, baseline start, baseline finish. But for a lot of us, kind of consuming that data is tough to work with. So as you may know, when we're working with project and we have baselines, and this is the key piece, we got to have a baseline, that project will calculate the difference between what you said and what's actually going on. So on a number of my tasks in this project, the good news is I'm actually ahead of schedule.
Hello, Julie. This is Renee.
Hi, Renee.
How are you? Doing great.
Very well.
We have about 5 minutes left till I need to start broadcasting the next session.
No problemo. So let's go ahead. I'm not seeing any questions. Are you?
No, I am not.
Oh, I'm so sad.
It means you're doing a great job.
No, just means that I've bored myself.
I enjoyed it immensely.
Well, I'm so glad you did. Renee, thank you so much. I apologize for the weirdness with the repeating screens. And this has been recorded, right? So other people can jump in? Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you so much. How do I get out? I'm guessing I stop the share.
Yes, and then I'll just stop the broadcast.
And then I wave goodbye.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate your help.
Yes, and then our viewers, they can, we'll be broadcasting for the next 12 hours so they can join some more Project Virtual Contracts.
This is so great.
12 hours, yeah.
I'm going to stay up and watch some more.
Okay, me too.
Thanks so much. Have a great one.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.